Hello, friends. I'm making this video to talk about the most regretful and shameful thing that I've ever had to talk about publicly. There's a video that's out that's a compilation of me saying the N-word. It's a video that's made of clips taken out of context of me of 12 years of conversations on my podcast, and it's all smushed together, and it looks fucking horrible, even to me. Now, I know that to most people, there's no context where a white person is ever allowed to say that word, never mind publicly on a podcast. And I agree with that now. I haven't said it in years, but for a long time, when I would bring that word up, like if it would come up in conversation, instead of saying the N-word, I would just say the word. I thought as long as it was in context, people would understand what I was doing. Like that context was part of the clip we were talking about Red Fox, how Red Fox said that word on television in the 1970s and how times have changed so much since then. Or about how Richard Pryor used it as one of the titles of one of his albums. Or I was quoting a Lenny Bruce bit, or I was quoting a Paul Mooney bit, or I was talking about how Quentin Tarantino used it repeatedly in Pulp Fiction. Or I was talking about how a Netflix executive, ironically, used it because he was trying to compare it to another offensive word, and he said it out loud, and they fired him. Not calling anybody or just saying the word out loud. I was also talking about how there's not another word like it in the entire English language, because it's a word where only one group of people is allowed to use it, and they can use it in so many different ways. Like if a white person says that word, it's racist and toxic, but a black person can use it, and it could be a punchline, it could be a term of endearment, it could be lyrics to a rap song, it could be a positive affirmation. It's a very unusual word, but it's not my word to use. I'm well aware of that now, but for years I used it in that manner. I never used it to be racist because I'm not racist, but whenever you're in a situation where you have to say, I'm not racist, you fucked up. And I clearly have fucked up. And that's my intention to express myself in this video, to say, there's nothing I can do to take that back. I wish I could. Obviously, that's not possible. I do hope that, if anything, that this can be a teachable moment. Because I never thought it would ever be taken out of context and put in a video like that. And now that it is, holy shit, it looks bad. And it's part of also me doing this podcast for thousands of hours, thousands of episodes, over 12 years. I've said a lot of fucking stupid shit, which is fine when you're talking about most things, but not when you're talking about race. And there's another clip that I have to address. There's a clip from 11 years ago. I was telling a story on the podcast about how me and my friend Tommy and his girlfriend, we got really high. We were in Philadelphia, and we went to go see Planet of the Apes. And we didn't know where we were going. We just got dropped off by a cab, and we got dropped off in this all-black neighborhood. And I was trying to make the story entertaining, and I said we got out, and it was like we were in Africa. It's like we were in Planet of the Apes. I did not, nor would I ever say that black people are apes, but it sure fucking sounded like that. And I immediately afterwards said, that's a racist thing to say. Planet of the Apes wasn't even in Africa. I was just saying there's a lot of black people there. But then I went on to talk about what a positive experience it was and how much fun it was to go to see this movie in a black neighborhood. It wasn't a racist story, but it sounded terrible. And like I said, you can have clunky stories about anything, but not about race. And so I deleted that whole podcast, but obviously somebody made a clip out of it and taken out of context. It looks terrible, but it looks terrible even in context. It's a fucking idiotic thing to say. And I was just trying to be entertaining. I certainly wasn't trying to be racist. And I certainly would never want to offend someone for entertainment with something as stupid as racism. My hope is that, look, I can't go back in time and change what I've said. I wish I could. Obviously, that's not possible. But I do hope that this can be a teachable moment for anybody that doesn't realize how offensive that word can be coming out of a white person's mouth, in context or out of context. My sincere and humble apologies. I wish there was more that I could say, but all of this is just me talking from the bottom of my heart. It makes me sick watching that video, but hopefully at least some of you will accept this and understand where I'm coming from. My apologies and much love. My sincere, deepest apologies and much love.
Hey y'all, I want to leave a short message here about why I decided to ask my music be pulled off of Spotify. So check this out.
No white people. Says, okay, take me to this one. And the guy goes, okay. I goes, is that in a good neighborhood? He's like, oh, yeah. Guy barely speaks English. He takes us there. We get out and we're giggling. Oh, we're going to see Planet of the Apes. We walk into Planet of the Apes. We walked into Africa, dude. We walked in the door and there was no white people. It says, okay, take.
I empathize with the people who are leaving for the COVID disinformation reasons, and I think that they should. I also think that Joe Rogan has the right to say what he wants to say. I also think that I have the right to say what I want to say. So as an artist who builds, Spotify is built on the back of the music streaming. So they take this money that's built from streaming and they pay this guy $100 million, but they pay us 0.003% of a penny. Just take me off. I don't want to generate money that pays this. Just take me off. That's where I'm at. And I know that I'm actually, to be honest with you, surprised that my statements were picked up, because I thought people weren't really going to listen to me because that's what I'm used to from the industry. But I'm glad that I am being heard, and for that reason, I want to clarify my statements. Again, this is why. Watch this.
Like, you know,
The nigger thing.
yes.
Saying the word nigger.
You've already said nigger.
D is just like nigger.
Saying nigger.
She's calling you a nigger. It's like this
Boy, that he's a nigger, but starts calling them niggers.
word nigger.
There should be a word like nigger, especially like the word nigger. That's our nigger. About niggers. He says nigger.
Guy, a nigger. And there are niggers.
Start saying nigger.
Allowed to use the word nigger.
Out the word nigger. See nigger. Word nigger. Say nigger, and he couldn't say nigger. And most nigger.
So we know how social media can be. Things can be doctored. People are taken out of context. It's happened to me many times. However, I want to be clear in no uncertain terms. Where I stand on this is that he shouldn't even be uttering the word. Don't even say it under any context. Don't say it.
Hey guys, this is Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. I just wanted to let that play through uninterrupted before we actually get started. Please do me a favor, hit the like button, comment, and subscribe. Let me know if you agree or disagree. I'm open to all of it. I want to start off by saying that I am not at all a Joe Rogan stan. A lot of times when you're a comedian and you say anything that's positive about Joe Rogan, you're automatically considered a stan. Even slightly positive about Joe Rogan, you're automatically considered a stan. When it comes to India Arie, I am an India Arie fan. If you've ever paid attention to my Instagram stories, you know that sometimes I do use her music in my clips. I do like India Arie, but I also think there's a lot going on here, and a lot of people are being used as pawns, and a lot of people aren't getting that, and that's one of the things that does bother me. When it comes to Joe Rogan using the N-word specifically, anybody that's ever paid attention to me or anything I've talked about on my podcast, Unbothered by Ty Rivera, I do not at all support white people saying the N-word. I just don't. It makes me uncomfortable. I also know that it's not my thing to forgive, so I'm not going to say this is the way black people should feel about it. I'm going to tell you guys how I feel about it as a person that is not only of color, but also a stand-up comedian, and has expressed very strong, because there was a situation not too long ago where I talked about one of the local radio DJs here, a guy by the name of Gooch that does stand-up comedy as well, and I had a very uncomfortable conversation with him in a green room because he used the N-word in front of me in a similar context to the way Joe Rogan was using it here, because there are a lot of white people that, like Joe Rogan expressed in his apology, that think it's okay if they use it, but they don't use it towards another person, not understanding that a lot of people of color feel like just don't use it. Like for me personally, like I said, it's not my word. So I don't feel like it's my word to excuse. So if a white person says it in front of me, I'm not comfortable from that side of it. I also don't want to feel like I'm a party to whatever it is you're saying when you're using that particular word. And then at the same time, I do understand where maybe a black person would walk in on a conversation like that, or hear a white person say the N-word and not care about the context, and maybe, hit them, and I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that words should equal physical violence, but some people just have that kind of reaction to that word, especially some black people have that reaction to that kind of word. So then let's say the black person hits the white person that said the N-word. Well, since legally that's not an excuse to hit somebody, then the black person gets in trouble, and then that turns into a whole other thing. So I just think it's best that white people stay away from using the N-word, and I will be very clear about that. I make no excuses at all for Joe Rogan's use of the N-word. Also, when it comes to comparing black people to apes or gorillas, that's something I've talked about before. I had a comic do that in front of me, and everybody treated me like I was the villain because this was a pretty white girl. And I was very clear about the fact that I wasn't comfortable with her comparing one of my friends, who is black, albino, to Harambe at the time. And I was very clear about the fact that, one, I didn't think he actually looked, because she was saying, that he just looks like him arbitrarily. And I was like, no, he doesn't look like. And so that turned into a situation because she turned it into a thing where it was that I was bullying her and I didn't even do anything to try to get her in trouble. I just told her I didn't think it was funny, and I refused to laugh at her showing me the picture and then saying, doesn't he look like our friend? I was like, no, he doesn't. And so that too, I definitely do not agree with Rogan on. I also do understand that, this has only become a real thing where people will actually stand up to it within the last couple of years. So there were a lot of white people for a long time that thought they were able to get away with it, and for all intents and purposes were able to get away with it. Also, I will say that I don't agree with it being Patriot Takes that went ahead and outed Joe Rogan. I always question how anybody has the time to do this. I don't feel like anybody that has a life would ever go through hours and hours of footage just to find these particular instances. But if that's how you want to spend your time, that's how you want to spend your time. Also, if you actually pay attention to Joe Rogan, if you've ever watched the show, because like I said, I'm not a stan, but I definitely do enjoy certain episodes of Joe Rogan. I like that Joe Rogan will give voice to some people that may have unpopular ideas and opinions, but at the same time, Joe Rogan is not far right, which Patriot Takes is exposing the far right. That's what they're about. That's what their mission is. But Joe Rogan, if you've ever paid attention, whether you like him or not, is not far right. That's just not an accurate description for what he is. So that being the case, I don't necessarily think that the intentions are the best when it comes from Patriot Takes, but okay, let's excuse that. Then when it comes to India Arie, like I said, I am a fan of India Arie, but she also brings up the money situation, and she brings up why is it that money that's being built on the backs of artists like her is going towards Joe Rogan. Well, India Arie, and like I said, I'm a fan, but at the same time, you don't bring in the kind of money, the kind of viewership, the kind of listenership that Joe Rogan does. Joe Rogan gets 11 million viewers, listeners to his podcast daily. There are few things even on television, if anything on television, that even gets that kind of audience. People talk about CNN and how abysmal their numbers are. It's just like a lot of things aren't being paid attention to right now like that. So when you have something that is that powerful, that does bring in that many people, I don't know how it is you as a business person, as a person that's been in the industry for as long as you have, doesn't understand how that works, how you think that that's something that you should question. Like, you can completely leave Spotify and it will not make a ripple. When it comes to Joe Rogan, I know I personally wasn't listening to Spotify. I didn't even have the Spotify app on my phone until Joe Rogan. I think some of my material is on Spotify. I think a friend of mine submitted that and it, or put it on Spotify upload. I don't even know how that works with Spotify, me personally. But when it comes to me specifically as a user having Spotify, I didn't have Spotify until Joe Rogan started being on Spotify, just because, like I said, he does have a lot of really interesting conversations. Do I agree with everything he says? Clearly not. Have I ever agreed with everything he says? I have never. I also, like on certain episodes, but this is with everybody that I watch, whether it's Wendy Williams when she was on the air, Charlemagne the God. I mean, I listen to Ben Shapiro. I listen to a wide variety of people and a wide variety of opinions. That's why when people accuse me of being a particular way just because I say that I listen to somebody like a Joe Rogan, and then people treat that like, well, clearly you think this way. No, I actually have a mix of things and people that I like to listen to, because I do like to get a wide range of opinions on a wide range of topics. But when it comes to Joe Rogan specifically, just like any other one of them, I have had times where I'm listening to their podcast and I was like, or his podcast, and I'm like, I don't agree with anything he's saying right now. And, but for me, that's a part of what's interesting, or what will make things interesting for me to listen to. Because as I said, I felt that way with Charlemagne the God. I felt that way with Wendy Williams. I felt that way with Ben Shapiro. I felt that way with anybody that I listen to. Just there's certain days where I'm like, I don't agree with any of this. The other day I did a video about the Whoopi Goldberg situation, and Ben Shapiro was who I was listening to. And I really didn't agree with a lot of what Ben Shapiro was saying. But at the same time, he did educate me on how Jewish was considered a race by Hitler, which I never thought of Jewish as a race, which is something I expressed on that video. I never knew that it was considered a race. So now I get it. So like I said, you take the good with the bad is what my opinion is, especially when it comes to Joe Rogan. And you think about, whether or not somebody's worth their headache. Like, that's a lot of times the way that I look at it. Because in a situation like this, if you think about it, like, that's what it is. Like, yeah, him saying the N-word and, being problematic, which I have a problem with the word problematic. I think the word problematic is problematic because I think it's been abused, and I think it's just a good way of copping out and not actually saying specifically what your problems are. And I really do feel like India Arie asked that her music be taken off and said that she didn't like certain things Joe Rogan said, and then Patriot Takes probably sent her that video compilation of Joe Rogan saying the N-word, and then she was like, oh, let me make my point around this. I do, even though, like I said, I like India Arie, I do think there was a bit of reverse engineering there going on, where India Arie didn't really know why he was problematic. She just always heard he was problematic. And then there's a lot of people that think Joe Rogan should be taken off the air or taken off Spotify because of vaccine disinformation or misinformation. I personally will do a video about that coming up, because I don't feel like that's what he's done. I don't feel like that's what he's doing. And I know some people would disagree, but I'm entitled to my opinion just like you're entitled to your opinion. And so what I was saying about, is Joe Rogan worth his headache? In a lot of cases, that's the way I look at it. I'm like, does this person, even if through other people, because he's had some very interesting people on his podcast, and again, a wide array of people on his podcast. If you've ever watched his podcast, some of my friends that have gotten the biggest boost in his career have been through Joe Rogan, and they have also been people of color. So I mean, like, I agree that he shouldn't be saying the N-word 100%, 100,000%. I agree with that. But at the same time, I do not think he's racist, because if he were racist, I don't think he would give a platform to people like a Brian Simpson, to people like Brian Moses, to people like Jamar Neighbors. I mean, a lot of the people, if you even look at the different fighters that he's talked to from MMA that he's had on his show, a lot of them are black. So when it comes to whether or not he's actually racist, I do not think Joe Rogan is racist at all. And I know some people would probably come down on me because they think if you ever use the N-word, then you're clearly racist. Joe Rogan is also 50 or close to 50. Like, when you're older like that, yeah, you have gone through different phases where, you know, like, you've used language that you probably wouldn't use in 2022. That's something I've admitted to as well. Like, when it comes to the N-word specifically, I grew up in Arizona. I'm Mexican. And a lot of times that word would get used. And when I was younger, I'm not proud of it, but I did actually use that word more times than I'd probably care to admit. But then I grew out of it. And sometimes it takes people longer to grow out of those bad habits that in a lot of cases they were raised with. And there have been a lot of white people that really did think, as long as I wasn't calling anybody that word, then it's not a problem that I say that word. So now Joe Rogan got it. He gave a thorough apology. He made no excuses for his behavior. He was just coming out and saying, look, I shouldn't have said it. Under no circumstances should I or any other white person say it. And to me, the apology he gave was good enough that I really do feel like he got it. Like, he has been educated on that. He does get it. And he also said he hasn't said it for years. So, are we going to stop people from moving forward? Are we going to stop people from evolving and say, because you said it at this point, you're now just not at all, a good person, a viable person? Like, to me, Joe Rogan is a human being. He's made a lot of mistakes. And like he said on the video, he's recorded a lot of podcasts. And anybody who's recorded a podcast knows you just go stream of conscious, especially the way Joe Rogan does it. If you've ever paid attention to his podcast, it's 3 to 4 hours of him just talking, just having conversations. So you're going to say a lot of stuff that one day you'll be like, okay, I wish I hadn't said that, or maybe that sounded stupid. And, he said the N-word several times. There's no excuse for that. But the way I see it is, does his show, through the people that he has on, through the questions that he asks, through the person that he is, does it educate me more than his, not so acceptable ideas or things that he said in the past does negative? And for me, I would say Joe Rogan is definitely a benefit. Joe Rogan definitely does offer more than his words sometimes in the past may have taken away. And especially the way, if you notice, he's just growing. And I think that's a similar thing with Dave Chappelle. That's why when they're trying to cancel Dave Chappelle over things he said about LGBT and me being LGBT, one, I'm not the sensitive side of the community, which I know some people would get mad at that, but I'm not particularly sensitive that way, so I don't really let words affect me when it comes to that. But at the same time, I do feel like Joe or Dave Chappelle is growing. And as Dave Chappelle is growing, so is his audience. They're learning from him. They're learning by his examples. They're learning by watching the things that he's saying. And if you watch, he is evolving. Same with Joe Rogan. He may have said some things that are unpopular. He may continue to say some things that are unpopular. But if he continues to grow and continues to evolve and continues to help his audience grow and evolve and continues to help me grow and evolve in my thinking, then I think he's a benefit to everybody. And I don't really know why anybody would try to be getting him canceled right now. Like, that part I don't get. Trying to get him pulled off. No, just because you don't like certain things he says doesn't mean that none of us should now be able to hear him. Doesn't mean his opinions completely don't matter. Doesn't mean he doesn't start good conversations. So yeah, be mad at Joe Rogan, but don't punish the rest of us and society in general about it, because some people may think I'm being dramatic when I say that, but Joe Rogan, Dave Chappelle, a lot of the people that we're being told should be canceled are helping society, grow and evolve. And for me, that makes Joe Rogan worth keeping on the air and worth whatever they're paying him at Spotify. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. This has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.